Welcome into the Stack Shack Sports Show. Today, we're going to be talking about the big news out of the LA Chargers. Yes, I know I'm a day late, but Jim Harbaugh is headed back to the NFL. He leaves Michigan after winning it all last year. So an NCAA title is in his portfolio, and he's heading back to the NFL. He once previously worked with the San Francisco Niners, made it to a Super Bowl famously, played against his brother, came up a little short in that one, but big news for the Chargers. We talked a little over a week ago about why I thought Jim Harbaugh was the best fit for LA. He's a bit of a West Coast guy. I mean, we might forget about it because he went to Michigan, he's been coaching in Michigan, but the rest of his career has been on the West Coast. It's actually all been in California. He worked in San Diego, went to Stanford, coached the 49ers, and now he's back in LA, back in California with the Chargers. That was why I thought Jim Harbaugh's coming home. It made the most sense as well. It has the best quarterback of the options available. And that is super important, and Harbaugh knows that. The only thing we had a concern about was maybe Harbaugh would fall in love too much with J.J. McCarthy and say, I need to go someplace where I can draft McCarthy. He didn't. He heads to the Chargers. He pairs up with Justin Herbert. Now, there's a couple of things. One, I think this is a perfect fit for Harbaugh. I think it's going to work well with his system. I think the Chargers are ripe and ready and are begging for just a decent coach. They've had struggles the last few years. And really, even you go back to the Phillip Rivers years, the coaching was never maybe up to the standard that a lot of fans were expecting and hoping for. So Staley's gone. Harbaugh comes in. This is a coach in Jim Harbaugh who wins everywhere he goes. Everywhere. And he wins fast. So good for the Chargers. Exciting for the Chargers. There is a slight caveat, and that is Justin Herbert, now or never. I think he's up to the task. I think the Chargers are a borderline Super Bowl contender next year. They are a waking giant that has just been mismanaged. They are not going to be mismanaged under Jim Harbaugh. He will be able to handle that. He took a terrible San Francisco team, turned him around almost instantly, and got him to a Super Bowl. The Chargers, I think, have more pieces and better pieces in place right now, today, than that San Francisco job that he took over. So, in a couple years, this might be a Super Bowl champion or a Super Bowl contending team. It absolutely is possible. Now, Justin Herbert, we've been giving you an excuse for the fact that you didn't have great coaching, that you didn't maybe have healthy weapons a lot, that your defense was struggling under the defensive head coach, which doesn't even make sense, and another reason why Staley needed to go. But now you have Harbaugh. If you are not a playoff team this year, with Harbaugh in the first year, again, this is a team that made it to the playoffs last year. They didn't make it this year because they were terrible. Herbert got hurt as well. You know, there's a few things going on there. But if Herbert has a complete season and they don't make the playoffs, I think the Chargers are going to be moving on from Herbert. They're definitely locking in with Jim Harbaugh, right? That's their future. I think it's going to work. I think Herbert's up to the challenge, but there is a bit of added pressure now. There's no more excuses. We got to see results out of Herbert. We all think he's good. Or at least most of us think he's good. I think he's pretty good. But I don't put him in that elite category yet because I don't care that you had bad coaching and, not a great weapons. Did Baker have it in Cleveland when he won his first playoff game? I don't know, right? Like, you got to be able to overcome some stuff. And now that you have Jim Harbaugh, it's very hard to overcome some of the things that Staley was doing. Some of the decisions he made to go for it in situations, to push the ball and miss out on the playoffs, to give up that many points in the second half. Understandable. Now you have Harbaugh. You have a competent coach. It's now or never for the Chargers. You got to make it happen, and you got to make it happen if you're Justin Herbert. So that's the added pressure. I think he's going to be up to the challenge. I think this is going to be beautiful. I think it's going to be a perfect pairing between Jim and Justin. Get that team whipped up into shape. I think it's a sleeping giant. Watch out for them next year as a deep playoff team potentially. Maybe Super Bowl. I don't know if I want to say Super Bowl yet because normally it takes a couple years to get to that level. But I could absolutely see them having one of these kind of Cinderella runs where they make it to a championship game and they get close to a Super Bowl. Or maybe they get to a Super Bowl and they get kind of blown out. It's on the table. It's definitely available now for the Chargers. Now, looking around the rest of the league, there's one big, glaring, obvious missing coach, and that is Bill Belichick. Raiders hired Antonio Pierce. I said that was the hire. It made the most sense. Titans pulling in Brian Callahan, somebody I know from Cincinnati as a Cincinnati fan. He's been good with Joe Burrow's development. They're going to pair him up with Will Levis and see what happens, right? I don't know if this is the greatest hire. I sometimes struggle a little bit with the hire an offensive coordinator from a team as my head coach, where him as the offensive coordinator was working with Zach Taylor, a very offensive-minded head coach in Cincinnati, right? Like, I sometimes worry about that. It's the same thing of, okay, if I take Andy Reid's offensive coordinator, is it Andy Reid who's making this offense great? Is it Zach Taylor who's making this offense great? You know, I take a Shanahan guy. I don't always know if I like them as a head coach, but they're learning. They're developing underneath it. We'll see how it goes. First-time head coaches, it's hard to have a good idea. Dave Cannells, I think I'm saying his name right, goes to Carolina. I think this was actually a really good fit. It was one that I wasn't really on my radar. I wasn't really aware of this. Had to actually talk to some people over on Instagram about what they thought about it, some people that knew him a little better. And I think it actually makes a lot of sense. This is the guy who made Geno look like an all-star and an MVP candidate last year. And then he just turned Baker around as well. Now, Baker had started to maybe have a bit of a turnaround when he got with McVay and the Rams. Seemed much more comfortable, but he looked good at Tampa Bay, right? They were a team that, I'll admit, I didn't expect much from them. They come in, they look pretty darn good. So he's definitely taken now 2 former early round draft picks that had kind of fallen by the wayside and returned them to, well, a pretty good playoff winning form, right? So they're hoping, pair him with Bryce Young, let's get what we can out of Bryce Young. I think this is a smart move from not a very smart organization typically. I wouldn't want to deal with this owner. There's no way the Carolina was getting Jim Harbaugh. He's not going to deal with that owner. Got a 6-year contract. You know, hey, if he fires you, hopefully you got a lot of that guaranteed. It's tough with the owner in Carolina, but I think this is a good fit. This was a smart choice. I can see that they thought this one through, so I'm excited for that. Gerard Mayo goes to New England, right? Bill Belichick left. Mayo gets hired. I hope the best for him, but I don't know. It's not my favorite hire. He wasn't my favorite candidate, but he's loved in the building, so sometimes you just got to go with, hey, this guy's loved by the players. He's going to coach in a very different way as Bill Belichick. Hopefully it goes well. So Atlanta. This is where everybody was kind of saying, it looks like Bill's going to Atlanta. Had multiple interviews with him. Jim Harbaugh had multiple interviews in Atlanta as well. So it was kind of that. And then almost seemingly out of the blue, they announced Raheem Morris. Now, he previously was an interim head coach in Atlanta. Was part of the LA Rams Super Bowl win. People like him. Okay, this is his first job at a head coaching job. He's from Atlanta as far as his background. He had coached there before for many years. So it does make sense when you look at it, but it is interesting to see that Bill Belichick is not listed here. Why is that? Well, to me, it's because Bill is really hard to work with. Everybody has seen what he is when he doesn't have Tom Brady. Like, let's be real here. That was always the discussion in New England to say, hey, is it Belichick or Brady who's driving this success? Well, Brady left, won another Super Bowl. Belichick has looked awful. Now, his defenses have remained serviceable, and in some cases decent and pretty good, but he has shown a complete ineptitude on offense. And you combine that with the fact that Bill, and you can go read all the reports, I'm not the only one saying this, but Bill wants all the power. He wants all the power. He wants control over personnel, over the draft, over all the coaching. And if you disagree with him, you're out. That's not the way to win in the NFL. That's not the way to win in life or business anywhere. You gotta have collaboration. One guy can't have complete control over everything. It just doesn't work. And he's shown a complete ineptitude on offense. Drafting, developing. Heck, he promoted a defensive coordinator to offensive coordinator. He just doesn't seem to get it. He's so puffed up, so consumed by his own ego that he can't admit when he's wrong. And that is not a winning formula for a leader in any aspect. Which leaves, will he end up in Seattle or Washington? I don't think he will. He's definitely not ending up in Seattle. I'm almost confident. Again, rumors suggesting Mike McDonald maybe. Baltimore, big deal. Detroit Lions, Ben Johnson, that's the favorite in Washington. There's no Bill Belichick. But again, they can't hire these people. They're still making playoff runs. So that's looking like Bill is not even in the running. Which means for the 2024 football season, Bill Belichick will not be coaching. And unlike maybe a Pete Carroll, who was maybe a bit surprising that they let him go, well, they kept him in the building. He did say that he might want to still coach, but I don't know. I don't think he'll go back to college, and it doesn't look like he's going to get one of the current openings. So I think he's going to be satisfied and continue being the advisor in Seattle. Belichick doesn't have that to fall back on. New England is not giving him a advisory role, and he doesn't seem to be comfortable with an advisory role. He wants complete and absolute power. He's a dictator. And it's honestly sad to see, because I do think he is a pretty darn good coach when he's coaching the things that he really does have expertise in. We can't all be experts about everything. My day job, I'm a software engineer. I don't know every single coding language. I have specializations. It makes sense that you need other people to contribute to have a winning organization in the NFL. Bill doesn't want anybody else. He just wants it to be him. And you know what? For the past couple years, New England gave him all of that power. And look where they ended up. And everybody in the league knows it. I don't see him getting a job. Let me know down in the comments what you think. Is there a place in the NFL for Bill Belichick next year? I don't see it. I know some people are maybe saying Washington because it is, geographically a little closer to New England. But if you're asking me, who do I want? I'll take Ben Johnson over Bill Belichick in a heartbeat. Offensive-minded coach to work with my young quarterback. And I don't get the baggage of Bill. I don't see any reason to hire Bill Belichick. I think Atlanta was potentially his best option. They went with somebody else, somebody they knew, and they didn't want to deal with Bill. Would you deal with Bill? Let me know in the comments down below, and we're going to see you tomorrow. I'm going to have a bonus episode tomorrow. Normally, Fridays, we do our best bets of the week. Tomorrow is going to be our best bets of the week. Games aren't happening on Saturday, so we can afford to push it off an extra day. Make sure you're subscribed and ready for that, and we'll see you then.